I'm Brownfield Megan Grebner. With me today is Gary Berg, an Illinois farmer. We're going to talk today about soybean use in terms of animal feed. What makes soybeans such a good feedstuff for animals?
We are always looking for researchers to do research on different formulations of feed with, of course, soybean meal in it that will get them the most bang for their buck, so to speak.
When you look at soybean meal in general, because we're talking about, we've talked about the whole bean, we've talked about oil, we're going to focus a lot on the soybean meal aspect of that, right, as we're talking about soybeans as a feedstuff. How much of soybean meal goes into livestock feed?
Oh, yeah, that's over 90%, 97% I think it is, goes into all livestock feed. And if you've been reading the news, you know that we've got some crushing plants that have opened up, going to be opening up over the next year or two, because the oil is almost as valuable, if not more valuable, than the soybean meal. So with the extra soybean meal that we're going to end up having, we've got to move some of that soybean meal in exports. But the best of all worlds is if the meal gets a little bit cheaper, oil gets a little bit higher, hopefully our livestock friends can expand their operations with the cheaper meal and be able to make more. They make more profit and they use more of our soybeans. So.
Talk about this relationship that you work. You mentioned some researchers, some of these partnerships that make growing demand for soybean meal. So how it helps to grow demand for soybean meal.
Well, like for one of the projects that we've had with poultry, for example, they found out that if you make the particles of the soybean meal a little bit larger, they get better feed conversion. We've found in some of the research projects that we've done that the higher percentage of soybean meal that you put in the pork ration helps the pork fend off more diseases and they will perform better. So that's our hope.
What makes soybeans such a in terms of digestibility? Can you talk a little bit about that, like how that kind of breaks down for livestock production and why U.S. soybeans are such a good option there?
Amino acids. We have the bundles of amino acids we found in U.S. soy is higher quality than like some of our competitors. So that's another one of our research projects that we do all the time.
What's the role that the soybean checkoff plays in growing demand for soybeans in terms of animal agriculture as well?
Animal agriculture consumes 97% of our soybean meal. So I say this a lot. It's great that we ship as many whole soybeans and meal to other countries, China in particular. That's great, but the best of all worlds is if our livestock friends, especially poultry, because they consume so many soybeans, if we can have more smaller markets, get extra value through feeding the poultry and pork in the U.S., and then have a lot of smaller markets for the meat products in other countries, that's the best of all worlds.
Talk to me about the return on investment and the fact that checkoff dollars are being used to grow demand more than just the whole bean.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the last return on investment study that we did, for every dollar that farmers invest in the checkoff, they're getting over $12 in return, $12.34 to be exact. And wow, I think most people, if they had a chance to put a buck in and get $12 back, they do that every day.
Don't we wish stocks would pay that well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And speaking of that, so we have to do that every 5 years, do a study on the return on investment, and we're due to have a study done again. In fact, I think they're working on it right now. It should come out within the next year.
If you have conversations with soybean farmers, whether it's in your home state of Illinois, whether you're traveling or you're at other meetings, what do you tell them about the importance that investing checkoff dollars is, and why Why animal agriculture? Why is that checkoff dollar so important?
Well, like we just said, animal agriculture is our biggest customer. But I've talked about animal agriculture and doing research projects on feed. I haven't even mentioned about one of our other partners, Clean Fuels. Without the checkoff, we probably wouldn't even know what biodiesel was today. And we do. Everybody knows what biodiesel is. Biodiesel's getting bigger and bigger, and now, besides biodiesel, we've got the renewable diesel and the SAF, which, if you don't know what SAF, that's the fuel they use in airplanes. And I mentioned that earlier. That's part of the reason that our soybean oil has become almost as valuable as the soybean meal. And so, going back to how valuable that checkoff dollar is, without biodiesel, we might not have the renewable diesel or the SAF fuel for airplanes. So I just can't say enough about how much good our checkoff dollar does for us and our 500,000 soybean farmers.
Gary, anything else?
There's over 1,000 different products that soybeans are put in. I didn't mention that a lot of the Goodyear tires, more and more Goodyear tires are made out of soybean oil. They're replacing some of the petroleum. I'm actually standing here talking to you in some Skechers that are made partially with soybean oil. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.
I'm Megan Grebner with Managing for Profit, a content partnership with the United Soybean Board on Brownfield.